All right, this is a demo on how to assemble this mirror ghost image. I've got the two images in Lightroom. I'm going to open them from Lightroom, but if you have my demo files, you're welcome simply to drag each of those image files to Photoshop one at a time to get them into Photoshop. Because I'm in Lightroom, I'm going to go to this image here. You'll see that I've got one image with this quote-unquote living figure in the foreground, and this other image with that living figure and the ghost figure standing behind her and also reflected in the window. This is the first one I shot, and I had the seated model, Brittany, hold still and told the quote-unquote ghost model, Naomi, to exit the scene. You'll see in the second shot, which is actually first in my list here, called No Ghost, that Naomi has moved out of the place where she was, but we can still see her in the right side. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see her still over here on the right-hand side. Keep that in mind. The other thing I'll point out is that I did remove a outlet plate right behind Brittany's arm right there. I went ahead and did that in Photoshop beforehand. So we have with ghost and no ghost. And I'm going to open up both of these images into Photoshop. Doesn't really matter which order I do these, but I'm going to go to the photo menu, edit in, and open as Smart Object. And I'm opening it as Smart Object as a good habit, but honestly, we're not going to be doing anything with a Smart Object in this demo. If you simply drag these images straight into Photoshop from the folder, they will open just as regular rasterized image layers, and that's fine. So here we have the first image open in Lightroom. This is the no ghost image. I'm going to go back, open into Photoshop. I'm going to go back to Lightroom and open the second image, which is with ghost, photo, edit in, open as Smart Object. And there we have the second image open. You'll see they're in separate tabs across the top. I am going to go to my window menu, arrange, and tile all of these vertically. There's only two, but tile them vertically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the no ghost image on top of the with ghost image. We'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to go and click on the tab of the no ghost image. And now I'm going to go down to the layers palette. You'll see I have a smart object here, that bottom layer. Even if it's not a smart object, grab the bottom layer and drag it onto the other image, and I should have hit the shift key when I let go, but I didn't. Give it a second. If you hold down the shift key, it will be perfectly centered. I'm going to consolidate all of these to tabs. It'll be perfectly centered on the image underneath it. And that's really helpful so that you won't have to do this next step. But I'm going to show you this. This is a good way to learn. If I go to the view menu and I turn on snap, and now I use the move tool, I should be able to drag this image right into position, and it snaps so that they're perfectly lined up. And when I turn off the top image and we see the underlying image, the overall scene does not change at all. The only thing that moves is Naomi out of the scene, or almost out of the scene. And you might notice that Brittany, the young woman sitting on the sink, the countertop, her head moves just a tiny bit, but that's not going to be a problem for us. So I have one image on top of the other. What I now want to do is I want to keep, you know what, I put with ghost up below no ghost, and actually I want them the other way around. So that's another thing we can learn from. I'm simply going to drag these into a different order. I'm going to drag with ghost up here so that it's above no ghost. Because what I want to do is this top layer, I only want to keep this pane of the mirror, and actually I also want to keep this pane because we know that the ghost girl shows up over in this area too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask to this layer, and I'm going to select certain areas that will be masked in that area. The first thing I want to do though is actually select those areas. So While I could maybe try doing this with the quick mask mode, or I could try using the quick selection tool, this is a rare case where I actually get to use the polygonal lasso tool. Polygonal, meaning it's going to make a polygon, means if I click somewhere and then click again, I'm going to connect with straight lines. So I'm going to start up here at the top. I'm going to click, I'm going to drag down, click there. It's almost like a spider leaving a web behind. Click there, click, click, and eventually I get back to where I started, and you'll notice there's like a little circle next to the cursor. I don't know if I can zoom in and do this at the same time. There's a little circle next to the cursor that tells me that my next click will complete the selection, and it did. Now, as I said before, I also want this window pane, so I'm going to go up here to my options bar and go from new selection to add to selection mode. So if I didn't do that, my next click would erase the previous selection. So now I have a little plus symbol next to my cursor, and that means I can add to the current selection. By the way, you'll notice that I don't really have to be terribly precise. As long as I'm keeping the part of the mirror that I want, I can go a little bit outside that area. They're going to match up perfectly. The exposures are identical. The alignment is identical. So now that I have those two areas selected, all I have to do is add a layer mask that will reveal this selected area only. Now the long way to do that is to go up to the layer menu, down to layer mask, and choose reveal selection right there. The short way of doing that is simply to go down to the bottom of the layers palette, and I'll zoom in to show you. There's a button down here that is add layer mask button. And if I click that, it's going to add a layer mask. And it's because I have an area that's selected, it will add a layer mask that reveals only that selection. And we can watch this here on this layer. As soon as I click this button, I get a layer mask that is black everywhere except it's white in the area that I selected. So it's going to show me only those areas of that image. And if I back up here again, we will see that now I have my ghost girl only visible here. I've kept only this area and this area of that top layer, and the rest of this is the bottom layer, which is the no ghost layer. Now, one further thing here, you'll notice that I don't see the ghost figure reflected in the marble top counter here. Now, this may depend on your philosophy of whether ghosts get reflected more than once through different surfaces. But let's say we wanted to see her reflection in this area as well. What I would want to do is go back to this mask, make sure that it's active. You see these lines around that mask. That tells me that that mask is active. And if I grab a paintbrush, my brush tool, and white is my foreground color, you'll notice my options, my mode is normal, my opacity and flow are up to 100%. When I'm ready to go here, what I'm going to do is paint. I'm going to enlarge my brush just a little bit here, and I'm painting with kind of a slightly soft brush. As I paint white, I reveal more of this with ghost layer. I'm revealing more of that layer by painting white. Remember that white reveals and black hides when we're dealing with masks. So if you want to see more of a layer, you paint with white on the mask. If you want to hide that layer, you paint with black on that mask. And there I've revealed the ghost there, as well as having seen her here, and I'm basically done. I will add that to finish this image completely for my own purposes, I also would do a slight desaturation of the ghost figure in the mirror and do a little selective blurring on her, but not important for this demo. That's it. Thanks.